in the loneliest of moments, if you can see that as not being isolated, but instead being with yourself, it's a completely different perspective.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
This is about self-love. This podcast, this life, all of it is about self-love. Because what I've realized is that for my entire life, right, as being someone who had been molested at a young age, being someone who my father's from the Philippines, and the form of discipline was physical, right, with like belts and things. And so I grew up not really feeling safe. I grew up I was a very late bloomer. I didn't hit puberty until way later than everybody else. And so I felt like I needed to overcompensate in a lot of ways. And so my achievements became the thing that I would hang my hat on, so to speak. What I did, what I accomplished, I would say that's what gives me my worth. And so I spent my entire life basically trying to prove something to myself and to everybody else. And mental health issues and depression, it runs in my family. And so I have battled depression on and off for most of my life. And it really came to maybe one of the deepest, if not the deepest depression I've ever faced in my whole life, which was in 2019 for several months. And I was really struggling. I had thoughts. I call them, they were suicidal thoughts, but they weren't about killing myself necessarily. They were more about just like no longer wanting to live. I know that sounds like it's just a difference, but it was just like, I don't want to be here. I'm tired. And like all of these things that was a part of my experience, because I just didn't think I could ever snap out of this pain that I was experiencing. And so I went through this last decade, and specifically over the last several months, the end of the decade in 2019 was the first period of my life where I was no longer in a romantic partnership. And so there was no way for me to go to this old pattern of feeling depressed, feeling sad, and really leaning into someone else to fix that for me, to make me feel better. And that was a big belief that I uncovered within myself, was that I had felt for most of my life that relationships are supposed to make you happy. Like your romantic partner should be able to help you in those periods where you feel low. And because of that, most of my life I had been in relationship, and therefore when I hit these really low periods, I would lean in to my romantic partners to help me snap out of it. And so over the last several months of being single, there wasn't that. It was me. It was just me. And my goal for my life, like truly, if I could say there is one goal that I have that above all else, is sustained happiness. And that doesn't mean never feeling sad. That just means that my default state of being is happy. I'm one of those people where people look at me and go, he's just so happy. He loves life. It's amazing. Like I want to be one of those people. And so to be one of those people, I call sustained happiness. And this is what I've realized about sustained happiness. Sustained happiness has to be cultivated solo. Sustained happiness, self-love being the key to that. Because if you have love, you're happy, right? Like if you love yourself, it feels good. There's happiness. That's where you find your happiness. Because otherwise, where does your happiness come from? The external world of, oh, this feels good, this happened, that's awesome. And so that these external things, my being around my friend makes me happy, being in my romantic partner, making more money makes me whatever it is, but it's still external. So internally, where is that found? Internally, happiness is found through the self-love. because that feeling emotes happiness. It feels good to love yourself. And so sustained happiness is possible when self-love is present. And how is self-love cultivated? And why is sustained happiness needing self-love to be developed solo? Because in those moments, in the toughest moments, in the ones that are the hardest and the darkest and the most difficult to be with, you feel alone. In my depression, when I was deep in it, I was in a romantic partnership. I had friends all around me, and I felt completely alone. And that is something that is incredibly common when people are struggling with whatever it is that they may be struggling with. They feel alone. And so in those moments, if you know that you are there, you always have your own back, then you're not alone in the way that most people feel alone. Because the by myself aspect of that is no longer isolated. You have a relationship with yourself. And I'm not sure if that makes sense, but for all of you who are on this self-love journey, in the loneliest of moments, if you can see that as not being isolated, but instead being with yourself, it's a completely different perspective. It's a different mindset.